I think one of the great liabilities in this post-truth era is that science has been weaponized. And so essentially whatever point you're making, you can claim that science is on your side, but you cherry pick the scientific evidence, so you've got the study that happens to point in the direction you're inclined to go. The reality here is that good science runs the gauntlet of debate. We never really have a single decisive answer to any question. Take the issue of vaccination. Vaccination, I consider one of the greatest advances in the history of public health. But you need a very low risk for any vaccine to justify its use because you're offering it to healthy people. That's the whole point. When you're doing primary prevention, the standards for safety need to be set very high. Totally different, for example, from intervening when someone has advanced cancer or serious heart failure. That person's so sick, you're willing to take big risks to try and save their life. Not so with a vaccine where risks need to be very low. So science has always required careful interpretation. And to reach that careful interpretation and make the best possible use of science absolutely requires that we be willing to listen to one another before rushing to judgment. And what happened early in the pandemic, because, and I'll state my point of view rather bluntly here, we did not have grown-ups running the country. Almost everything that emanated from the administration was renounced by much of the scientific community. Frankly, that was fairly valid until it got carried away with itself, and then the idea became, if it comes from this administration, we must renounce and reject it, even if it's right. And I think somewhat lost in the mix there was the notion that even a broken clock is right twice a day, right? So somebody can be, right for the wrong reasons and wrong almost all the time, but every now and then they'll say something that actually is correct. And a genuine respect for science would say, we're going to push politics out of the way, even though this is not someone or a group of someone's we're natively inclined to agree with, they happen to be right in this instance. We lost that ability. We lost the ability to listen to one another. We lost the ability to accept that the source of the information was not the determinant of whether the information, the perspective, was correct or not correct. So science was essentially weaponized, and it became something that dictated your membership in a particular tribe. So, essentially, the Liberate My State group became the anti-science tribe, and the Lock It All Down because it's the only way to save lives became the We've Got Science on Our Side tribe. And that's really not how science works. Very often there are merits in competing arguments, and robust ideas run that gauntlet and come out the other end. This, of course, is a bigger problem than just the pandemic. We've lost our ability to do this with regard to almost anything. It impedes our progress with regard to climate change and so many other critical issues of our time. I also think we need to do a better job at differentiating between informed and expert opinion and idle nonsense. The problem these days, everyone has the same megaphone. And so, people who are trained to interpret challenging information and people who just have very strong opinions and no knowledge whatsoever are all in the same mix. Now, differentiating between those two is not censorship, it's just sense. So we have to allow for science, we have to allow for sense, we have to allow for the free exchange of information, but we must impose a construct of sense that acts as a filter and allows us to differentiate between informed and expert opinion and idle nonsense from somebody who just happens to have internet access.